Once a rare sight in Togo's capital Lomé, protests are becoming frequent. The government, led by Faure Gnassingbé, banned them 3 years ago. He's ruled for 20 years. Recent constitutional changes allow him to stay in power for life. Demonstrators want him to go.
He should step aside and let someone else lead. You can't keep ruling us by force forever. Let someone else prove what they can do.
Demonstrators blocked roads all over the city and in several other towns after activists called for 3 days of peaceful protests starting on Thursday. The rising cost of living has also fueled discontent. Togo's the 10th poorest country in the world.
All we want is for Gnassingbé to step down. We'll keep protesting, even after 3 days, until he finally leaves power.
The crackdown by police and soldiers hasn't kept people off the streets. Amnesty International says dozens were arrested and many tortured following demonstrations 3 weeks ago. The government says it hasn't received any official complaints of torture. But it's something the regional bloc ECOWAS has frequently condemned Gnassingbé's government for. His rule followed that of his father, Gnassingbé Eyadema, who was in power for 38 years. Hundreds of people have been killed and thousands forced from their homes during decades of crackdowns on dissent. Last month, a popular singer, Amron, called for people to mobilize against the government in a social media video. He was arrested the following day. That hasn't deterred the demonstrators.
Faure, please set Togo free. This country doesn't belong to you or the Gnassingbé family. Just let go of the country.
The government said anyone spreading false information or causing disturbance will face the full force of the law. Activists have called for the protests to continue until Saturday.
My black sisters and brothers from Africa and from around the world, I want you to listen carefully to the wicked, evil, and diabolic things Presidents Capt.TRAORE of Burkina Faso, Assimi Goïta of Mali, and Abdourahmane Tiani of Niger have been intentionally doing to other black Africans. We all can recall that, just few years ago, people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger rose up against their incompetent and dictatorial leaders. They ultimately succeeded in toppling these incompetent and dictatorial leaders in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Can you believe that these same people of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger are supporting right now incompetent and dictatorial leaders in other African countries against the citizens of these African countries? This is exactly what President Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, Assimi Goïta of Mali, and Abdourahmane Tiani of Niger have been doing against the people of Togo by supporting the incompetent and brutal president of Togo Faure Gnassingbé against the Togolese. Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, Assimi Goïta of Mali, and Abdourahmane Tiani of Niger are doing this evil thing against Togolese because they said that the brutal and dictatorial president of Togo, Faure Gnassingbé, gave them access to the port of Togo for free. Can you see how diabolic the attitude of these three presidents get? I used to have great admiration and respect for President Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, but not anymore. Forgive me if the truth I'm going to reveal about the so-called revolutionary leaders Captain Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Tiani hurts your feelings. The so-called revolutionary leaders in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger don't give a damn about other black Africans who are not Muslim and are not from their countries. Worse, the people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger think they have more in common with Arabs than with their fellow black Africans because they describe themselves as Muslims. Based on my numerous visits to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger for the past 8 months, and also based on my observations, I can say for sure that many things that have been happening in these 3 countries are very disappointing and heartbreaking. I'm asking my black sisters and brothers from Africa and from around the world to stop jubilating over small things and stop celebrating everything because things that are said to be going on in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are not true at all. What is true and real though is the fact that the so-called revolutionary leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, respectively Captain Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Tiani, have been fighting for their personal interests and for the interest of their countries only. It is painful to see that the people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have not been fighting for the collective interest of black Africans who are not Muslim. It is backward and shameful that Burkinabe, Malians, and Nigerians continue to have this tribalism mindset that has been undermining and ruining Africa from inside for centuries. In case you don't know, the people of Mali rose up 4 years ago against their incompetent leaders that had undermined their country. The people of Burkina Faso rose up 3 years ago to topple their brutal president that were in power for 30 years, and the people of Niger rose up 3 years ago to topple their incompetent president who sold up his country to foreigners. However, the same people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are supporting right now incompetent presidents, dictators, and sellouts in other African countries against the will of the citizen of these countries. Can you imagine for a second that some black Africans are still cruel towards other black Africans even in the 21st century? For a while, people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have been shamelessly showing their wickedness and cruelty towards their fellow Africans. Remember, I told you in one of my videos on here that the so-called revolutionary leaders in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have suddenly become the adulators of the brutal dictator Faure Gnassingbé of Togo and have been backing this barbaric dictator against the will of Togolese just because they said Faure Gnassingbé gave Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger access to the port of Togo for free. Saying so, these so-called revolutionaries in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are not only been condescending towards Togolese but they are also insulting the intelligence of Togolese. It is well known and documented that, for decades, the Gnassingbé family regime in Togo has been giving money out to individuals and enriching individuals in West Africa, across Africa, and beyond in exchange for support for its brutal regime. Faure Gnassingbé, the so-called president of Togo and probably the most brutal dictator in Africa right now. Faure Gnassingbé has even become an advisor to the so-called revolutionary leaders Assimi Goïta of Mali and Abdourahmane Tiani of Niger. Faure Gnassingbé seized power 20 years ago in a constitutional and bloody coup after the sudden death of his father who was not just brutal but barbaric. For more than 60 years, the Gnassingbé family has taken Togo hostage, has been oppressing, depriving, and starving Togolese. As it reported, the so-called revolutionary leaders in Mali and Niger have suddenly become the adulators and admirers of Faure Gnassingbé because they have also been receiving millions if not billions of dollars of stolen money the Gnassingbé brutal regime has been giving out for almost 60 years to buy foreign support and to bribe high-ranking individuals, not to say anything about its several human rights violations. For the past 60 years, the brutal regime of the Gnassingbé family has also supported financially or enriched many politicians and individuals in West Africa, across Africa, and beyond in exchange for support. The Gnassingbé regime, from the father to the son, had been the participants in the major wars that have plagued the Africa continent for the past 60 years. Many international reports had underscored the involvement of the late Ayadima Gnassingbé in bloody civil wars in Africa such as the Biafra War in Nigeria, the civil wars in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Angola, Central African Republic, Sudan, etc. The name of his son Faure Gnassingbé was also mentioned in the civil war in Ivory Coast that toppled the former president Laurent Gbagbo. Many credible analysts, with deep understanding of politics and its ramification in African countries, already said that the brutal dictator Faure Gnassingbé has been acting as an informant within the newly formed Sahel Bloc AES for his French and American masters. Like his late father, Faure Gnassingbé is unquestionably an incompetent and worthless president who has been wasting Togo's resources, drowning Togo in colossal debt. Worse, the Gnassingbé's brutal regime in Togo has been torturing, murdering, starving, and enslaving millions of native Togolese for the past 60 years. By adulating and backing the brutal dictator Faure Gnassingbé of Togo, the so-called revolutionary leaders Captain Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Tiani unequivocally show their contempt for the people of Togo. The so-called revolutionary leaders in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger didn't stop there with their contempt, but they have also become wicked and cruel towards the unfortunate people of Togo who have been dealing with one family ruling for 60 years. For a while, the secret agents of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have been helping the secret agents of the brutal dictator Faure Gnassingbé track down the Togolese political opponent who have been living in exile in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, as you can heard it from the words of this Togolese political activist.
Dans cette vidéo, je vais répondre très rapidement à la propagande, aux calomnies, à la désinformation propagée par certains agents, certains miliciens payés par le régime nazi, le Faure Gnassingbé, pour
In this video, I want to respond quickly to the propaganda, slander, and disinformation spread by certain agents and militiamen paid by the brutal regime of Faure Gnassingbé to poison the mind of Togolese and to manipulate the conscience of people who are tempted to support the popular struggle against the barbaric regime of the Gnassingbé family in Togo. Many of you have written to me or sent me a video of an individual nicknamed Barton de Fianer. I do not know who Barton de Fianer is, but I inquired about him and have obtained information. According to my information, Barton de Fianer is an individual residing in Burkina Faso and has been working for the Togolese intelligence services with the assistance of secret agents of Burkina Faso to identify and arrest Togolese residents in Burkina Faso who are denouncing the brutal regime of Faure Gnassingbé. This individual is said to have helped arrest more than 10 Togolese refugees in Burkina Faso on the behalf of the brutal dictator Faure Gnassingbé. Barton de Fianer is reportedly paid via a person who also works for the Burkinabe intelligence service who is in contact with the head of Togolese intelligence service. So, if there are Togolese people living in Burkina Faso, I urge you to be very careful. Be very careful, because Barton de Fianer is a secret agent of the Togolese intelligence service, and he has helped identify Togolese residents in Burkina Faso, especially in the capital Ouagadougou. These Togolese residents in Burkina Faso were later kidnapped or arrested by the Togolese intelligence service. Barton de Fianer has also been making videos for the past few weeks to attack me personally and so on. Well, I didn't pay much attention to him because, as I said, I'm a Togolese public figure and the leader of an international organization. It's completely normal for him to attack me personally also. I accept it. Even the French government attacks me for denouncing the savage and barbaric regime of Faure Gnassingbé in Togo.
Ce monsieur, depuis quelques semaines, faisait des vidéos où il s'attaque à ma personne, etc. Je n'ai pas prêté attention plus que ça parce que, comme je dis, en tant que personnalité publique, en tant que personnage médiatique, en tant que leader d'organisation internationale, c'est tout à fait normal de se faire attaquer. Moi, je l'accepte. Même l'État français m'attaque.
As a black African myself but not a Togolese by birth, I think this attitude of Capt.TRAORE, Assimi Goïta, Abdourahmane Tiani, many Burkinabe, Malians, and Nigerians is very sickening and revolting. I wish our ancestors sought revenge against Capt.TRAORE, Assimi Goïta, Abdourahmane Tiani, and all Burkinabe, Malians, and Nigerians who have been assisting the brutal dictator Faure Gnassingbé in tracking, arresting, torturing, and murdering in an execution style his political opponents. I hope karma would come very soon to hunt the people of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger.
From March of 2025, Togo's Foreign Minister Robert Dussey publicly announced on Facebook that Togo was considering joining the AES. In his later post, he hinted that if Parliament, the Togo Parliament, and the President agreed to it, why not? That was his question. And in recent times, I'm talking about March, he doubled down by saying that Togo is considering joining the AES, a strategic decision that could strengthen regional cooperation and offer access to the sea as a member country. Ladies and gentlemen, I honestly wish, and I want to say this quickly for those who are overly excited, I honestly wish this were true, but unfortunately, I don't trust the Togolese president. I cannot at this point say he's good friends with Macron or France, but they have met multiple times in 2024 and in 2023. Togo and France share a consistent strategic alliance built on historical ties and mutual interest in security, economics, diplomacy, which started all the way back in the former president's era, Faure Gnassingbé's father. As a matter of fact, in 1986, after an attempted coup in Lomé, Togo, France quickly deployed troops, which included parachutists, jets, and a whole ship to support President Iyadima's government. They protected the current president's father's regime for 38 years and oversaw the transition of power from the father to the current president. Ladies and gentlemen, I see people making a fuss and a buzz around it on social media, but I'm rather very skeptical at this point. Togo's president could be leveraging on this to get France to commit to doing something for them. Ladies and gentlemen, and like I said, I wish this were true in the sense that the AES is a confederation of 3 landlocked countries. So certainly they would have needed a country close to the sea. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, they could use that sea. But I'm very, very skeptical at this point. And having access to the Togo port will be the most ideal situation in the sense that it is a free port and they all speak French. Togo's port already serves all the AES countries, but also serves the rest of other West African countries whose businesses seek lesser import charges. Togo is the transition bridge between Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Nigeria. There is a lot of revenue the Togo government makes from its road taxes within West Africa. Those who are overly excited about this news of Togo likely joining the AES, you should be very careful. And because of this, the president of Togo isn't like the other military presidents of the AES. They are totally different people. The Togo president is a politician and only interested in doing whatever it takes to consolidate his presidency till death. Just last year, ladies and gentlemen, in March, he changed the constitution of Togo into a parliamentary system where now he doesn't have to depend on the people's vote to be elected as president of Togo, but on his majority numbers in parliament. That is what he has done. He made this constitutional change after he has served for 20 years already in Togo. Ladies and gentlemen, people must wake up and not get carried away by any blowing wind. The man may only be looking for validation for his presidency on the continent. He and his father has together ruled Togo for 58 years and nothing special is happening there. What does he actually share in common with the leadership of the AES? Just think about it. They mean business, the AES leadership, and have put their lives on the line for what they believe. What about the president of Togo? They are pushing for development like never before in their countries. How about Togo? France is their largest trading partner after China. Does he want to lose that, ladies and gentlemen? Ever since the president of Togo took office in 2025, he has added on the average $350 million to Togo's GDP year on year in the last 20 years. Meanwhile, his net worth is speculated at $13 billion. According to the World Bank's April 2025 macro poverty outlook, Togo's extreme poverty rate, measured at under $2.15 per day in 2024, was 24.8%. So where is all that money in Togo? Ladies and gentlemen, Togo is a major phosphate exporter. Where is the money? He wants to make himself a lifetime president and seeks the validation of Africans.